Hello, welcome to the Salt tutorial on making enemies. This tutorial will only cover the Unity aspects of making enemies and not the code part because you can de-inspire an existing mod for the code part. So the first thing you want to do is, well, you'll want to make a Unity account, and that may take you a while, and I'm not going to go over how to do that because I don't remember how to do that. But you'll want to download any version of the Unity Hub is fine, but specifically you want to download the 2020.3.26 version of the Unity editor. Uh, and I think that's just Unity editor. I don't remember, but yes, 2020.3.26 specifically. And you will have to download it from this website, the unity.com. You can just find it from the Unity editor archive, just like in Google, because this is an older version that they don't let you download normally, just like straight off the Unity hub. But if you're not using this version, your mod will not work because this is the version Brutal Orchestra is built in. So the next thing you'll want to do is there'll be a Google Drive link in the description that has these two Unity packages. You'll want to download those and have those on hand. But for now, uh, after you get to the Unity hub, and feel free to pause and like do shit because this is gonna take a while. You'll have your Unity hub, and then you'll want to press New Project, and you'll want to make sure that you're on editor version 2020.3.26 F1, and then you'll want to make a 2D project, and then you can name it whatever you want, and then create project. Now I'm not going to go through the full steps of creating project, because that will show more of my personal information, and I don't really want to do that right now. So instead, I have this, which is I just built it already. I made the project. So now we go back to these two packages, and you want to drag them in one at a time. Just literally drag them from the folder into like this area down here, and it would be the project tab. Drag it down here, and then we'll import it, and you'll get to this window, and you'll want to press import, and it may take a while to load because Unity is slow. Yay! And then if you get this, just reload. There's nothing there that'll like cause any issues. So then there's that one, and then this one as well. Import. Um. So from here, you're going to want to do, since we're turning this into an asset bundle. Not only will you need to make the assets you're creating in the asset bundle, but you also need to put everything in this, and this folder in the asset bundle. So what you'll do is you'll go down here, and if you don't have that, uh, I think you can just like right click and like restore to inspect or something. You'll want to create, you'll just this drop down window, go to new, and then just name it like whatever you want. Try to keep it unique name because I think there are issues if the game Brutal Orchestra tries to load multiple asset bundles with the same asset bundle name. So you do that, this one, and then everything inside the folders as well. Literally everything. This may take me a while. And I'm not going to have this fast forward because I don't know how to do that. Fun fact, you can also, if you click on an object and then you use shift and then the arrow keys, if they're all of the same object, you can select them all at once. It took me a long time to learn that. Well, I'm sorry I'm rambling, but actually I'm not sorry. I'm going to keep doing it. There we go. And now we can start making enemies. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a folder for this so that they're not just in the assets folder, just for organizational purposes. And of course, set the asset bundle. If you're missing something from your asset bundle, you might run into some funny bugs when you try to load it in game. So when making an enemy, the first thing we'll need to do is go to. Hopefully, you have this tab on the side that shows folders. It's easy to navigate. You go to enemy base, you find this guy, and you right click it, and it should bring up this window. And you go to the create tab, and then you go down to prefab variant. And then I'm just gonna name it that. Remember the name for your object because the name and the file pathing are important for being able to load it into the game. Also asset bundle it. And then if you have this sample scene up here, you can just drag it on as well. That makes it show up, which is useful. Although usually I do it in here so that there's not too much extra on the side. But it's good for scale. Next, we're gonna get some sprites that I have on hand from my existing enemy mod. Enemy sprites, from what I've generally understood, are about 144 by 144, but don't quote me on that. Let me find something I can use that isn't insane. Sorry, I'm not good at making simple enemies. I want to use that guy, but I think it's a GIF. Uh, well, I guess you'll see me use Asprite. What you can do if you have a GIF file is if you open it. Well, this is if you have Asprite. Maybe you won't have Asprite. Fun fact: you can. Oh, hang on, give me a minute. First thing you want to do is you want to make sure that it's um at the bottom of your frame. Generally speaking, that'll help you out more. Either at the bottom or in the center. I guess since this guy has a bit on the bottom, I'll put him in the center. Although usually we have enemy sprites at the bottom, so I guess we have the pivot points at the bottom. So I'll do that for just teaching purposes. Yeah. Save. Blah blah blah. That should have moved him every frame. It didn't. Why didn't it? Because there are a bajillion frames. Why is that the case? Well, give me a minute. Yeah, okay. Next thing you can do is you can go to File. Actually, this is what you would have done if you had set your thing up properly beforehand. Export sprite sheet. And use output file, and then you can select it and name this. There, yeah. And that'll turn it into a sprite sheet, which is useful. Although come to think of it, that was a terrible example. Yeah, I'm not using that guy. I'm so sorry. Do I have anything reasonable? That's just one fucking sprite. Uh, Should have gone through this beforehand. Ah. Hmm. Wait. Uh. I don't really want to use someone else's sprite or like a sprite someone else drew without their permission, so I'm trying to find one that I drew that works. This, I guess, works. So you can literally drag again the object into the Unity editor spot. So first things first, when setting, if you set it up properly, it should automatically kind of do some of these for you, like setting it as a sprite. You'll want to set the asset bundle. Since this is a single sprite and not a sprite sheet, we can leave this as single. We're going to set the pivot point to the bottom. We're going to set the pixels per unit to 32. This is important. Well, this is the average sprite size for a Brutal Orchestra sprite. They set the pixels per unit to 32. If you drew your sprite too small, you can decrease the pixels per unit, which will increase the sprite size. And if you drew it too large, you can increase the pixels per unit, which will decrease the sprite size. I recommend doing it this way before you start animating, rather than setting it like with the scale. We're not done yet. Next, you need to set the filter mode here. This might be in the way. Minimize it to point. This is very important too. And then compression, you need to set to none. And it's those four things: pixels per unit, pivot, filter mode, and compression. And then just apply. So next we go onto this side of the screen and we go to, sprite. And then we can literally just drag this sprite here. Yay! Isn't that awesome? You may want to adjust the shadow size, like the scale to like 1.2 maybe, 1.3, so that it covers the entire sprite body. That's not necessary, but usually it's good. Next things you want to do is, in here, you want to press this button here, which allows you to modify the box collider. What this is pretty much the mouse click box for your enemy. You want it to cover the entire sprite. But you also don't want too much extra space, so that, like, they're gonna report that as a bug. So just keep that in mind. Next thing you want to do is the 3D UI location. This is where the health bar shows up. Generally, you want this a little higher than the enemy's top, so each of these horizontal lines is 1 point. So right now it's at 3. If I increase it to 4, it goes 1 point up. There's this little circle here, if you can see it. If I increase it to 5, which is what I think I'm going to do, it'll go up here. If you increase it to like 5.5, it starts getting cut off by the timeline. So if you got it, if you've already put it at 5 and it's still like barely off the top of your sprite, you may want to consider just having it like in the middle of your sprite so that it doesn't get cut off. Also, putting it too far down, in case you've played Brutal Orchestra, spoilers, Heaven has a health bar below its sprite, which gets cut off by things like smokestacks or Leviat. Thank you, smokestacks and Leviat. So just be warned about that. Of course, we're not done yet. I mean, technically, you could just use this, but we're gonna animate this. So first things first is you right-click the empty space, go to create, and we want an animation override controller. And I'm just gonna name this something. The name of, by the way, the name of everything that isn't the Unity prefab doesn't matter. The only thing that does matter about them is that they're in your asset bundle. So from here, we're going to click on this guy, and there's going to be this thing, controller, and we want to set this to basic enemy. And then we're gonna click on the prefab. And if you look down here, there's controller. You're going to drag this into there. Next, we're going to create animations. So this guy has no sprite animation. We're just going to do an idle one. Most enemies in game have like breathing animations where their prefab is stretched up slightly. That's what we're going to do right now. You want to drag this into idle. And by the way, the package I sent you is broken. If you do not set the idle animation, it'll have its own default one, which has keyframes that will mess with the death animations and make them not work. So there's that. Also, feel free to save whenever. You'll have to go back to your sample scene and save, but actually, I don't know if it. I think it might auto-save everything except the sample scene. Next, you'll want to go to Windows Animation. I already have it here. But we're gonna click on like anything in this object here, and then there's this drop-down menu. These 5 here, and then we've replaced one. We've replaced enemy sprite animation with our custom one. Do not mess with these default ones. You only want to mess with the custom ones. So when making an idle animation for stretching and skewing, generally you want to use the locator. That's only if you're putting it in the idle layer. The idle animation like slot, you mess with the locator. If you don't want to use this layer of scale because that'll mess with the entry animation, and you don't want to mess with sprite scale because that messes with the death animation. Like if you go to animator, you can check to see what uses what. So idle and enemy flee, both enemy flee here uses the locator scale, but that's okay because these two animations cannot play simultaneously. Sprite layer, this is the sprite scale layer, by the way, goes basic hurt. I think controls locator position, so you don't have to worry about that. Basic dying controls sprite scale. The dying animation can play at the same time as the sprite animation and the idle animation, so generally you don't want to mess with sprite scale unless you're making a custom death animation for it. And we're not doing that because that's just too much work. I don't care. Sprite layer. This controls specifically the actual sprite itself, which I'll go over later. For now, we're just making uh stretch and skew animations. And this is the important part. This button here toggles whether or not you are recording the animation. So if it's red, you're recording. If it's not red, you're not recording. If you mess with this stuff while it's not red, this is just setting like what it starts as. So like when I load it into the game, it'll pop up with this, but then it'll immediately go to whatever I've set it to start with the red in the idle animation because this one gets played like immediately. So make sure you're on animation mode or recording mode when you're setting the animations keys, and then not when you're not doing that. So first things first is we're gonna go to here, and I'm gonna right click the word scale and then add key. And what this does is this keyframes the animation, and this will be more knowledgeable later. I'm going to also go to about 1 minute and then do the same thing, and this will set the bounds of the animation. This highlighted area here is how far the animation goes. Once it reaches the end of the highlighted zone, it just teleports back to the beginning. That is if you set loop time. I forgot to go over that. Set loop time. Set loop time for your idle and sprite animations specifically. For your like death animations, do not set loop time. Next we're gonna go to halfway between this. Go back to locator. We're gonna set another key point. But this time we're gonna change the y value to like, or I mean, the x value to 0.9, which makes it thinner, and then the y value to 1.5. 1, which makes it taller. And if you... I do this pretty oftenly just because I'm paranoid. You don't have to. If you use this and then play, you'll notice that what it's doing is it goes from one key point and then automatically slides all the values up to the next key point within the given time. So for instance, if I dragged this key point earlier, it'll like shoot up really quickly and then it'll take all this space to go back down to its default. I like keeping it in the middle because not doing that makes it look kind of weird in game. But if that's what you're going for, you can do that. Spoggles have like really fucked up locator animations, for instance. But yeah, this is it. You've got an enemy. That's pretty much it. I'm going to go over slightly more complex enemy now that has sprite animation. Actually, no, I should teach you. The first thing you do, if you set all of this correctly, you can, to get the asset bundle out of this, you right click, and then there should be an option for build asset bundles. This may take a while. And then what that does is it should create a new folder, asset bundles. You don't need to stick this folder in the asset bundle. If you go here, there's the actual asset bundle file, and if you right-click the file, show and explore. I'm not going to do that because that's going to show my personal information, but it'll show you the like explore location where the file is stored. What you'll do is you'll literally add that into your mod as like an embedded resource. That's what you'll do, and then you can look at other people's mods for how to get the embedded resource into the game as an asset bundle. Yeah. So now that that's done, second enemy, create folder, second enemy. I'm gonna asset bundle that. We're going to go back to enemy base and create another prefab variant. You don't have to follow the format of naming I'm doing. I do it this way because it's easier for me to remember, but like you can just name it whatever you want. Since if you have this open, you can just like fucking look at the names and then drag them over. So I'm going to drag this guy into the second enemy folder, and I'm going to click the second enemy folder to show it. I'm going to drag this one up here as well. Make sure not to set it as like the child of anything. If you'll look at the blue line, make sure it's at the same level. If you set it as the child of something, it might break something. I'm not sure. Now, if you look, they're in the exact same spot. That's not what we want. So I'm going to mess with this here. You can mess with this in the sample scene area. That's totally fine. If you go into the actual editing version, you can't mess with it. It has it grayed out. If you messed with it, somehow it breaks things. Don't animate the object's position or rotation either. That'll also break things. I don't think you can though. But just here in the sample scene, this is just like displays. Each enemy is about in game when you load it up. Like the grid position is about 3 x's. So I'm just gonna increase x by 3, and that'll separate them well enough. Now I'm going to find this thing that we made before. Actually, that's a terrible one because it has way too many animation frames. Ugh. Who has a small amount of animation frames? Oh, I know who has a small amount of animation frames. It's this one. So, when you're making multiple, like a spreadsheet, first things, 32, point, none, but you won't set the pivot point in multiple mode because you'll set that in a different window, which I'll show later. The first thing you want to know is what the the individual size of each of these is you want them all to be equal, first of all. And then you'll want to know like the pixel exact amount. Like this. I'm gonna copy this. You can do it whatever way you want. I'm just doing it the way my sprite editor lets me. So I'll know it's 36 by 48. And that's important information. Because what we'll want to do is hit this sprite editor button, which brings up this window. You want to go to slice and then type grid by cell size. And then we can input our numbers 36 by 48. Awesome. It did it automatically. And this is where you modify the pivot point. It's down here. For this guy, we want it to be the bottom. The rest of it you can ignore. Slice is the button we push to make it like separate these. And then you want to hit, after you're done with this, you want to hit apply. Now you can reslice them whenever, but it's better to get this done before you start animating. Yeah. Don't revert. Whoops. Don't like try to drag stuff because that might break it. Revert. I think I dragged some accidentally. Now if you open this, we've got multiple sprites. Isn't that awesome? I'm only gonna be using 2 of these because I planned this very poorly when I was first starting making enemies. So we're gonna go here. By the way, this brings up still the other guy. If you don't want the other guy to show up, you can either take him off the sample scene, or you can double-click the object itself, which just shows that I want the other guy there, so I can tell if I've got my thing too small. We're going to go to sprite again, and we're just going to drag the sprite in. And would you look at that? It's way too small. So we're going to go here, and I'm going to go from pixels per unit 32 to 16, which will double its size. That looks good. Now we're going to go through the same steps as we did last time. We're going to create an animation override controller. Try not to include special characters in the names of your objects, because that can ruin things if you're doing them incorrectly. Some special characters don't translate very well into file pathings, which is how it gets things. These are like actual files in your computer, by the way, that are being created and like destroyed and moved around. So we're going to put that there, and then we're going to create another animation. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create an idle animation, and it's going to be an empty one, but this is just because otherwise it'll break the dying animation. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to create another animation, and this is going to be our sprite animation. And don't forget to loop time. That's important. You might find visual bugs if you don't do that. And then we're going to put the sprite animation in the sprite spot. Crazy, I know, right? We're going to go to the animation tab again. By the way, if you window animation, it might have popped out. I just dragged mine in here because I like it better that way. But whatever floats your boat. So we're going to make sure we're on the right animation first of all. And that looks like the right one to me. And we're going to record, and we're going to add a keyframe for the sprite. What is that? Shut up. You can animate the sprite itself. So we're going to do that one there. And then we're going to do... By the way, you don't have to add keyframe every time. If you're changing something, you can just change it, and that'll automatically like create the keyframe for you. We're going to go to sprite 5. And then at the 1 minute, if we play this, for instance, the instance it gets to that one, it teleports back to the first sprite. So we're going to go here at 1 minute and set it back to sprite 0. And now we have an animation that looks like this. Isn't that cool? I hope it is. I really hope it is. So now that we're done with that, we're going to mess with this thing again to make it not so monstrously tall. And then we're going to mess with this one again. We're going to put this guy up to 4. Usually about 1 Y point in space is good enough. Just remember that if you have enemies that stretch and skew, for instance, like our funny enemy here, if we go to his idle, he goes up to about there in height, so our 3D allocation is still above it. If you have it stretch and skew too much, it might not do that, which is, well, that's a you problem. So now we have our two enemies, and I'm gonna make a third enemy because you can combine sprite animation and stretching skewing animation. Wait, did I asset bundle these things? This isn't even for an actual mod. Why am I checking that? Folder. There we go, that's good. Enemy base, create prefab variant. And if I'm going too fast, sucks to be you. Slow down the video or something. I don't know. Let me find something else I can use. Ugh, I'll use this guy. Fuck you. This guy, I don't even remember what his sprite size was. Fortunately, we have the original GIF, so I can sprite size. What do you know? It's 128 by 128. Crazy. 32 multiple, because it is multiple points. None apply. Asset bundle. Sprite editor slice. Grid by cell size 128 by 128. Slice. Apply. Yay. Your enemy sprite. There we go. Oh. Did I do something wrong? Oh, this is because it's, yeah, if your, like, thing is way too large, you may have to go to max size and increase that. Let's see if that does anything. That's a little better, but it's still a little blurry, so we're going to increase the max size again. Oh, there we go. Now it's not blurry. Yay! Is it not blurry? Yeah, it's not blurry. Oh, I gotta mess with the shadow. Looks good. I'm gonna mess with the shadow on second enemy as well because I forgot to do that. 1.1.2, 3, 4. I'm also gonna make this shadow thinner because that guy, yeah, this guy doesn't look very wide. Draw enemy. This thingy. To like there. Yeah. Also, fun fact. Hang on, let me create animation override controller. Let me make sure it's in the asset bundle. Let me make sure it's basic enemy. Drag this in. Anyways, time for your fun fact. You can reuse animations. So, for instance, if you click this circle button, it shows you everything it can go in. Most of these are the default ones. I'm gonna be taking, is it funny anim, because that's a solid idle animation. Now, if we go to funny anim, wow, it's the same animation. Isn't that crazy? Well, now that I know about how high it goes up to, I'm gonna set this down to, honestly, sometimes you may want to leave it up here, because if you bring it down too low, it'll get blocked by, like, smokestacks, you know? So I'm gonna leave it up there. Now we're going to create a sprite animation. I spelled that wrong, but who cares? Because the only thing that matters is this name, and I'm going to rename it because that's a terrible name. Yeah, make it something you can remember or like type easily, because I don't. Yeah, whatever. We're gonna go down to sprite animation. We're gonna go to recording, and we're gonna go sprite. We're gonna add a bajillion keyframes. I'm gonna separate them each by like 5 seconds. Although, wait, I don't want that one animated. What was I saying? I don't believe that each second there corresponds to an actual in-game second. Uh, if you play the animation, that's about how fast it'll go in game. So just like look into that. God, why does this thing have so many sprites? I was not cooking. 55, 1 minute. Yeah, when you're doing sprite animations, make it like a reasonable amount of sprites, or you will suffer like I am. After this guy, I'm gonna demonstrate gibs, because gibs are actually really simple. And then I'm just gonna keep going until I get like interrupted with crazier and crazier examples. I hope I'm not being interrupted now. That should be, yeah, I should be fine still. I think I made this animation specifically like organized so that it would automatically reset itself. No, I don't care. Ugh. Oh my god. By the way, if you're curious how I'm making it like zoom in and out like that, I'm using the scroll wheel on my mouse. Right, and we're gonna play this. Yeah. Oh, I didn't animate it correctly. One of them, who cares? But that's about like right, almost right, except for the fact that it pops up and down in one frame. If you go back to your sample scene after we've done this, and you hit this play button up top, let me minimize that. This button here. You can see about what they'll look like in game. Isn't that nice? Okay, I'll make Gibbs now. So for Gibbs, things acid bundled. Okay, we're gonna go to Gibbs Mudlung, this folder down here, and we're gonna create a prefab variant on this guy. And by the way, the name of the Gibbs object is also necessary to remember. We're gonna drag this into this folder. And we can drag this onto the scene as well. Usually you want the Gibbs for an enemy. Hello, I'm back. Okay, so as I was saying, you generally want the Gibbs to be in the same position as the enemy. And Gibbs are for. That just makes them easier to find. So firstly, Gibbs are a sprite sheet, so we're doing that again. Generally speaking, Gibbs are a sprite sheet. You know, generally speaking, it's not completely necessary, I guess, but yeah. Also, you also want the the pivot point on the Gibbs to be the center. Why isn't that one centered? Who fucking cares? So Gibbs themselves are pretty easy. There's I'm so sorry. like 3 things you do. Let me do it this way. So first things first is the splatter color and the floor color. Now you can't see the floor color because this is in 2D mode, so it's literally just flat. If we press this button here and it shifts it into 3D mode, there's floor splatter. Isn't that crazy? So I'm going to go back and I'm gonna go here because you see the color is controlled by these two. It's like a random color. I'm going to be using the color picker to sort of find where I want, and then I'm gonna completely ignore the color picker. Okay. Just that. And then really what it comes down to is just repeatedly spamming it a bunch of times until you've decided, yeah, I kind of like that. Then you can copy the hex code there and take it up here and do this one. This object controls the splatter. This object itself controls like the floor bits. So go back here. Yeah. You do have to keep repeating it because in game it'll bounce off like the floor in combat, but there's no floor here. So Joel. Next part is these two texture sheet animations. You have to manually replace each object, unfortunately. If there's a way to not manually replace them, I haven't figured it out. Which could totally just be a me thing, by the way. Generally, you want to increase it up to the amount of objects plus 1 so that it'll get all of them. We're going to do the same thing here. I'm going to do all of this. And then you may notice, I'm so sorry, you may notice that maybe they're a little small. So what you can do is you can go here and you can change the start size. So I'm gonna go, if you look at these, those are a bit small. We're gonna increase this to 1 and 1.2. And now they're a little bigger, as you can see. I still want them to be a little bit bigger, so we're gonna go 1.1 to 1.3, and that I'm still not happy with that. 1.2 to 1.5, and we'll see how that looks. I like that. I'm gonna do the same here. Generally speaking, you want the back to be a bit more larger than the front ones, because the backs are the one that get shot out away from the camera. So we're gonna go to 1.4 to 1.8, since that's a little bit bigger than what we had on the other side. So the back one should be a little larger than the front ones generally. Now that we have that, we're gonna mess with the mission because I think this is too many. So you go to a mission and just decrease this by like any amount you feel like. If you set it to 4, it'll create exactly 1 object. I think it'll do 2 objects at 8. But I'm not entirely sure. I just know that 4 is exactly 1. And the emission for the back is generally a little larger than the one for the front, so we're gonna change this like 20, 26. Who cares? And if we zoom out, that's a little less. Yeah, I'm happy with that. And that's it. That's all of Gibbs. Now there are a couple other things you can do with Gibbs. Um, we're gonna go over to this guy, and we're gonna drag this one's Gibbs. No, where is its Gibbs? Ah, here. By the way, when messing with Gibbs, the pixel per unit size doesn't actually matter because the thing that changes it is the start size. That's what is modifying the actual size of it. I think this is a 16 by 16. Yeah. And then, of course, we must create another prefab variant. Yay! Mm. Also, when you're gonna drag it up, make sure not to drag it into an object. See, we're in third Gibbs. Make sure you drag it into the sample scene, because otherwise you'll be attaching it as a child of an object or whatever in that. Might fuck something up. It'll make one of them spawn both of them or something. We're here now, so we're gonna change this to that. No. You can pick whatever colors you want for the blood, really. The Mudlung Gibbs, which is this is what it is based off of, are all they're like red and orange. But then you have like Keko Gibbs, which are like I don't remember what color they are, but they're like a weird color or something. And then you have like Music Man Gibbs are kind of like red or orange. The blood, I mean. But feel free to use like whatever colors you feel like, honestly. That's the wrong one. By the way, if you turn off collision, they will fall through the floor in game as well. If you want that to happen, like if you don't want them to interact with anything at all, that's what you turn off. But usually you want it on just to how because of like how they appear. So another thing you can do is you can set cycles, which is right now they're just still objects. If you set cycles to like, I'm gonna set this to like 2, it animates them so they kind of like change sprite. I'm gonna set this to actually like 6, and then 6, just so we can see it a bit more. I'm gonna zoom out a bit. They're, can you see that? They're kind of changing. I'll make that 12. That might make it more apparent. I don't think it is. Huh. There we go. See? Another thing you can do is you can mess with start speed. For instance, uh if we look at the start speed, it kind of launches them out that way. But if we decrease it to like right now it's 5 to 10. Let's say we do change it to 2 to 6. It just makes them fall a bit more inwards. Then maybe want to change the gravity. Let's say we want to make them lighter. We can change this to like 1 to 2. And that makes them fall a little slower. But as you can see, because they have still force, they're going out a little farther. So we'll change this to like 1 to 4. Another thing you can mess with is the shape. So we're on the back hips. This shape is pretty much how they get ejected out. So if I want them to, this is, by the way, rotation controls where I get shot out. So if I want them to get shot out straight up, I would change this to -90, and they would shoot out up. Of course, they don't have very high speed, so they'd still kind of fall afterwards. If I want this shape to be more concentrated, I would change, I think, like the radius here, and then they all spawn out of the same point. Or if I don't want them to do that, I can change it to like 50, and now they spawn all over the place. That's a bit large. Let's change it to like 10, even 10 is a bit large. Let's do 2. Oh, wow. Yeah, it's all pretty large. Wow. Yeah, see, 1 spawns them on the edge there. And maybe we don't want them to have too much spread in terms of their speed. That just makes them fall. Well, it launches them up straight down, which makes them fall straight down. If I change this to like 45, they'd get shot out all over the place. Yeah, so that's more stuff you can mess with. Yeah. And that's Gibbs. What else? I'll mess with more complex stuff then, I guess. Another enemy. Base. Why did I do that? No. Prefab variant. There you are. And let me get, I think it's from here? This, and then this. And then for messing with multiple sprite objects, you can just click one, shift tab, and then you can mess with the properties of all of them. And you can set all of them into the asset bundle faster. This one I'm going to leave as center. This one I think bottom. This I'll apply. This one bottom. By the way, when you are setting the when you're setting the sprites, whatever sprite you put here is the one that gets highlighted, and this will be important in a bit because I'm about to make multiple objects. And you might be a bit confused as to why I'm doing this. Let me demonstrate. Oh, and then another thing to keep in mind is the order and layer. So I'm doing all of this. That can stay. And then copy, paste, and then that. And we'll set this one to 1. So now we have multiple sprites here. And now you're wondering, what am I going to do with this? Well, you see, the reason for this is if you don't want to do sprite animation, you can do funny Unity animations. And as soon as I get everything set up, I will demonstrate what the hell I mean. So we're going to set this thing. Actually, we're going to start with here. I'm going to add a key here for rotation. And I'm going to go up to maybe 2 minutes. And I'm going to set this to 360. So what this does is it rotates it like that. Actually, I don't like that. I want it to be negative 360. There we go. And then maybe we'll stretch it out a little to like, I don't know, 6 minutes. Even though that's not actually 6 minutes. Now it circles like this. Don't record. Yes, that's important to remember not to record, otherwise you might spawn extra keyframes, which was unintentional. So now we've got it rotating like this, but I don't want it to stop at the top, so this curves tab here, you can change how it is. So I'm gonna change this so that this points up to there. Oh, don't do that. And then this so that this points down to here. And now it should be just a constant straight loop. Yeah. So now we're also going to mess with this one. So we're going to go here. And we're also going to add rotation for this. And we're going to use the rotation tool so that it's like over here. Here. So then here, and then at like 3 minutes. And here, we're gonna make this positive. So now it kind of rotates. Oh, I didn't set the other keyframe. That's right, you have to remember to set it on the other end as well. So now let's look at this. Not quite what I was going for. Let's move this keyframe to 130. Then copy this keyframe and put that one at 30. Let's see how this looks. Not quite what I was going for either. But you can do funny shit with this. Maybe just 0. Properties. Let's try this again. Here, we'll rotate it so that it's like this. And then here feels like a good spot to add another keyframe. And let's copy this one over to here. So now we go like this. And then here at 3 minutes, let's move it up a little. And then 4 minutes, we'll rotate it inwards this way. And 5 minutes, we'll rotate it a bit this way. And now we've got something that looks like this. Isn't that neat? But also, we still have the idle animation that we didn't work with. So, if you want things to animate like this asynchronously, you can utilize both the sprite and the idle animation. Since both of those play simultaneously, but if you see this one lasts 6 minutes, if we make them last different lengths, so like if I take this guy and I add a key for rotation, and then at Instead of 6 minutes, we'll go to 4 minutes. Not actually 4 minutes, by the way, but. And we set this to 360. So now. Oh. Right. Do this. I'm going to select specifically this so there's not too much extra junk in the way. This, and then I'm going to do a very simple locator animation as well. And now if we hit the play button, because as you remember, that plays both of the animations simultaneously. Come on. Now we get something like this. Isn't that neat? So, I'm not done yet because I forgot to set this thing. Another thing you can do, actually, is you can animate the box collider. So, for instance, let me go here. I think this is it. We're going to add keyframes for this. So, I don't think you can directly add keyframes, so I'm just going to shift that, and that makes it animate. We're going to go maybe 2. Set it here, here, 4, here, here. Probably should set one at 3. And then we'll just copy these keyframes and drop those down at 6. And now the box collider sort of follows along with the actual sprite, which is good to keep in mind. You don't have to do this, of course, but it's a nice touch you can do if you have extra time. And let's set this 3D UI location as well. Actually, that's fine. In this case, as you can see, the top of this sprite is way above 5.5. Would get totally cut off by the timeline, so we're just gonna leave it there. What else can we do? Ah, that's right. I'll show one more thing, and that's... Let me create another... Let me make sure I have everything as it. Yes. And then create folder. La, la, la. I'm going insane. Yeah, I'm going insane. Let's put this in here. We'll drag this onto the scene and we'll put this at -6. And is it here? This is the Gibbs. What's this one? Is this the sprite sheet? That is not the sprite sheet. This is the Gibbs. I do want that one. I guess it's here then. Yes. We're gonna multiple that. Point. None. Apply. Bundle. Sprite editor. It may take me a while to get to where I'm trying to show you, but just bear with me for a bit. Sprite. Oh, did I not set the pivot point correctly? Yep. Yeah, remember to do that. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to add a particle effect to this enemy. I'm also gonna disable the shadow. You can just do that if you feel like it. But I'm gonna go to here. No, wait. Oh yeah, this works, I guess. And I'm gonna copy this object. I'm gonna go back to this guy. And here I'm going to paste it as a child. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do looping. And now we've got a constant flow of objects. Now I don't want it to literally look like that. There's a couple things I want to do first. The first thing is, and when you're messing with particle effects, it's good to put it in 3D mode. I'm gonna set this all that way, and then I'm gonna have it point straight up. And then I'm going to mess with the shape a little. Radius 0. Angle. I'm not gonna have it be a cone, actually. I'm gonna have it be a sphere, I think, is what I'll have it do. And then let me move this here. And then let's go back here. Radius 1. Ooh, alright. Yes, by default that has funny numbers attached to it. It's a bit too much. 0.5. See how that works. I like that. Next we're gonna mess with the texture sheet animation. Oh, I need to 32 multiple point none apply asset bundle. Did I asset bundle this one? Yes. Sprite editor slice. I think these are 32 by 32. Yes. Oh, I'm going insane. But I'm gonna go back to here and I'm going to utilize these guys as our texture sheet. Now if we restart it, see? Funny stuff. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change the size. Let's see how that looks. It's a little large. Yeah, I like that. We're going to change the start speed to be 0 to 0.2. And we're going to change the gravity modifier to be negative, actually. So negative 0. Let's go negative 0.1 to negative 0.2. Let's try this. Now they float up. Isn't that neat? Why did that one spawn all the way over there? Oh, it's because of collision. So for this one, I'm going to turn off the collision so they can actually spawn within the sprite properly. Now, if we look at that, that'll lag the game, probably, due to how many objects. So we're going to set this start lifetime to, like, 2 seconds. That makes them real short. Although it's a bit too short. So let's random between two constants that make it 2 to 3. And I think that'll be about the effect I'm trying to get for. Yeah, I think so. The other thing you can change is emission too as well, I forgot. What was that? Oh well. That's fine. So now we have one of those. I'm gonna copy that and paste it again. For this enemy, I want there to be 2 of them. Let's move this one down to the bottom, and let's change this one back to a cone. Let's see, how does this look? 0. 30. How is 30? Let's change this one's start speed to 1 to 3. Oh, actually, maybe we'll change the start speed here from 1 to 3. No. It's like, is that what I was trying to go for? That's a little too much. We'll change the emission down to 32. That's better. And let's lower it again. Cool. By the way, when you're animating keyframes, you can animate the emission of the particle effect if you've tacked it on like this. Let's attach this so I can do Unfortunately, I don't think you can toggle loop time on multiple animations simultaneously, which is annoying, but it is what it is. Who cares? Let's change the locator, spiral, go to the 1, add a key. Let's lengthen this a little randomly. There we go. And then go here. We go here. Add key. And then let me just see. Is that a yes? And now let's see how this one looks like. There we go. Isn't that neat? But yeah, that's this is a very simple tutorial on enemies, I hope. Um you can do a lot with enemies. Uh Go crazy. Yeah. Yeah. That's it. And then don't forget to make sure to build your asset bundles whenever you're done with your enemies. And then I'm not gonna go over the code because I don't feel like it. I'm tired.